everyone. My name is Marlene, and welcome to Python on Azure with Marlene and Gwen. Today we have a very special guest, Armin Ronacher. Gwen, Armin, how are you? How are you both feeling today?
I'm excited to be here.
Hi, how are you?
Really good, really good. Gwen was saying that we needed to find the biggest potential first guest today.
Yeah.
So.
It's going to be hard to top this one, but very excited for this chat. Armin, thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here and talk about agentic stuff.
Exactly. So I think generally what we wanted to do for this episode was just, Armin has been in the Python community for a long time, is doing a lot of experimenting right now with agentic coding. So maybe we can start out by having you introduce yourself to people watching. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, Armin?
Yeah. So I, at the moment, do a lot of stuff with agents, give or take. I've worked the last 10 years on Sentry without AI support. And then I've built a lot of open source software, probably for like more than 20 years at this point. And the most well-known ones are the Flask framework and probably the Jinja templating engine, the click command line tool. That sort of stuff in the Python ecosystem, at least, is what I built quite some time ago at this point. Now, probably for like the last 6 months or so, I have been doing a lot of experimentation with all kinds of AI shenanigans. Particular now this sort of agentic wave of tools. So today I'm going to mostly play with Claude code. And my suggestion is I'm going to introduce what I want to do here, because I think I might want to let it go while we're going. Probably going to be the best option here, because like one of the consequences of using a tool like this is that's kind of slow. There is a library called Whisper, which is this thing. And I usually, when I do programming, I talk to this thing. So let me do this.
Wow, lazy Vim. I like.
So I was like, hey, I want you to do something.
Yeah.
Right. This is sort of how
Nice.
I do stuff. So I do a lot of stuff with voice, and this runs locally, and this uses a thing called a whisper. And so I figured it might be an interesting experiment to see if we can get this thing to compile, use one of those models to make a transcript of video to text, and then make some sort of automatic tool that then also makes a blog post out of it. That's sort of the idea. And I was thinking of using Whisper for it, which runs locally, and to also maybe use a local model. In this case, I was thinking of the Microsoft V4 thing with LM Studio.
Right on brand. Love the plug.
Okay, so that's the idea. And I kind of want to let it do something on its own. And I think like I have one video here, which is this one, which is a video recorded about me showing something with LLDB. I kind of want to get a transcript out of this, right? And so what I want to do is use Claude for this and just have it compile Whisper for us, and then we can sort of go into questions, because I'm pretty sure it's going to take a little bit.
Yeah. Sounds perfect.
So I very inappropriately use Claude in what I think a lot of people call YOLO mode, which is it bypasses all the permissions. So it has all the permissions. And I also only use Sonnet, so that's not even the best model, just because I don't want to run the rate limits and then get a different experience. So I just want to have a consistent experience throughout. So basically what I want to do is we want to do this. We want to have a Python tool using ub-script that transcribes videos to text using whisper.cpp. This is this thing here. So I'm going to give it where the code is. For now, we only want to compile whisper.cpp. In particular, we care about the whisper-cli tool contained within it. Okay, so let's just let that do its thing, and then we can sort of watch it as it goes. And then, so the goal is that this sort of figures out how to compile it itself, because I don't want to deal with this on my own.
Amazing. I think this might lead into our first question, which is, what's your current, like, let's say, AI tool stack? We can obviously see a bunch of stuff on the screen already.
So I usually use Claude, and I will also say, like, I don't really care that much about what these tools are. It's just the one that I'm used to the most. At this point, I think there are like 30 different ones. So I use that. Then I use a combination of NeoVim and also Visual Studio Code to review it. So in this case, you can see that it just does a bunch of stuff here. It has already cloned this repository. So that's usually what I do is like I let it work and then I just observe what it does. And I then use any one of those tools that can make me talk to the computer. So in this case, I'm using Voice Inc., but there's Whisper, there's Super Whisper, there are a ton of them.
Right.
It just makes it
So
convenient.
basically, you like speak to Claude and tell Claude to do something, and then it lets it build it in the background, and then you review the files. Is Claude saving the files in VS Code after it's making the files?
So there is a VS Code integration that I don't know if it is active here. It might be, but I don't actually use it. So I don't actually know what happens if you don't use it. So it is obviously set up, but I don't know to which degree it does something if I don't click this button. I honestly don't know. So we actually did get a script out, which we could review now, right? So it wrote something here. And actually, there's one other thing that's kind of important. You should set up Git. Why? Because Claude doesn't have checkpoints, so we need to you need to set it up in a way that we can go back if we screw up. So I don't want to have this file. I don't want to have this, and I don't want to have whisper.cpp. We don't need that for now. Then let's do git add this.
So you're adding instead, whenever you create or Claude creates a significant change in the files, you want to push those files to a GitHub repository somewhere. Is that what's happening right now?
And I don't even
Okay.
care about the pushing necessarily, as just being able to review it.
Okay.
So for instance, so I actually there's this, I don't know if I'm even going to use this script, but clearly it has already created some script somewhere, which we seemingly can run now. So we can just test what happens, right? I didn't. So we have this video here. And apparently it even has arguments. Why does it have arguments? Can do JSON. I guess we want txt. Let's see what happens. Nothing good. So, well, clearly we need this model, right? So this is the first part where we can just either try to figure this out ourselves now, or we just take this entire thing here and say, well, we got an error.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just have it try to figure this out itself now. Two things here. The first one is I want you to not just use the base model. I actually want to use the turbo free model. I'm actually not sure. Turbo free model. Actually, don't know what it's called. So this is the part where we just check quickly. Turbo. We want large v3 turbo. This is the one that we want. Secondly, clearly the model is missing. So I know that the model, I think the model is missing because I said something here like failed to open. So this model is not here. So we want to figure out how to download this model. So far, no programming, basically. We're just trying to figure out like how to make this thing work. And the nice thing is like getting whisper.cpp running yourself manually could take a little while, right? You need to read documentation, everything, but it can do that. So it's quite a time saver, I would say.
As far as your okay, so let's say the AI tool is not accomplishing what you want. How do you approach, oh, this is something that I manually want to go do versus I'm going to just provide more information and get it to try again?
So I think it just depends a little bit on what you want to do. In this particular case, what we're trying to do here is we're just trying to get it to run. And I don't use my brain. It is not sort of the setup in which you would do programming, but it is the setup in which I think I can probably work for like a couple of minutes here, and it makes forward progress, and then hopefully gets us a working Whisper transcription thing going. Which is sort of a mode that kind of works when also talking about like what I'm doing here, but that's not the normal flow. I think normally you would use your brain a little bit, but this is like an unnatural setup to some degree. So I'm more willing to just let it do its thing without reviewing this properly. But normally I would trial and error maybe, but then eventually it turns more into regular programming where you use the same sort of principles, but not here right now. Well, we can see now if it runs. But we have a transcription that was suspiciously fast, so that clearly didn't do anything. Okay, so I don't actually need the transcription right now. In fact, I don't need the entire script right now. What I actually want to know is, did it run this program correctly? And so I will. So let's see. We made it to transcription completed successfully, which is here. So what I want to do here for case, I want to see what it runs. Because actually, so it runs whisper CLI with output txt-m, blah 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 blah. I have no idea where it puts this. So let's tell it quickly to. I want you to write the transcript next to the video file with a .txt extension.
So do you think that one of the things that, so we know a couple of days ago, no, 2 days ago, GPT-5 came out. And one of the things that people would be saying, it's mixed reviews right now with GPT-5. But one of the things that I have felt for myself, and I think other people have said, is that it's more reliable. So when it says it's going to do something, it's going to do it correct. Like it's more likely to do it correctly, but it's going to take longer than, say, for example, Sonnet 4. And what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that, I think what something I've seen on Twitter, for example, is that has kind of caused some division where some people feel like that's not useful and it's just better to have a faster model that you can instruct and iterate on versus a model that's going to take a longer time. What are your thoughts on GPT-5 and generally the agentic LLM vibe?
Such a loaded question. Well, I think like one of the problems generally is that it takes a really long time to figure out if something is good or bad. And like GPT-5 at this point is what, 2 days old, give or take. It's impossible to say if it's good or not. I don't understand like how people have opinions so quickly. I honestly, I don't know, right? Because it's just really hard to say if it's good, if it's bad. The main way I think in which agentic code tools work is that you evaluate them not on how good is it at writing code. You're writing it with how good is it at writing code in a tool loop, like where it compiles, runs, reads the error, does this. That's the thing that I care about. I don't really care that much about necessarily how good it is about writing code alone. Like it can't be terrible at it, but I don't need a tool that is writing the best possible script.
Yeah.
By default. So now we got a transcript. Right. So it was able to get us there.
Yeah.
So this is a transcript, obviously.
Nice.
And what is actually also incredibly interesting here is that it managed to recognize that I said Claude. I don't actually, that is surprising. I was not expecting that. But like we got to some point where something happened.
Yeah.
Right? It wrote code I don't like. I don't like that it wrote there except here. So there's clearly some stuff I wouldn't necessarily want it to do it that way. And it has functionality that I don't want, right? It has like it can do different kinds of output. But that's not so much what's important is like it got us without thinking to a point where it can on my computer take a video file, use ffmpeg to extract the audio track. Like, I would have to look this up in the documentation, right? But it figured out how to get the audio track out of this video and how to run it then through the Whisper CLI that it downloaded and built itself. But it also figured out how to download this model. Like, all of this, it did it itself, right? And I think that is the part that really saves you a lot of time, is because, yes, it knows a little bit about how ffmpeg work. Maybe it has seen Whisper CPP in its training data. But for the most part, it got to this point by reading the documentation, right? I think that's basically what it did. I've given it projects that it has not seen in its training sets because it's an obscure Mac app on GitHub, and it's able to read a README and build me a binary. And I think that's sort of really where what is so impressive about it. If you look at like which models are capable of doing this today, it's only a handful of models. You're basically down to the Anthropic family of models. You're down to maybe GPT-5. I haven't managed to. I haven't managed to get it running, to be honest, properly. And the Quen's recorder sort of gets there. There are a few of them, but there are not that many.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gwen and I had been talking about the general web ecosystem, and we were very interested in like, how do you think that vibe coding, I don't even know if you call it vibe coding or agentic coding, but like, how do you think this would have affected your journey if you had started, working on Flask when this was already out? I don't know, Gwen. Yeah, I know you came up with this question. Am I saying it correctly?
Well, I saw you. It wasn't necessarily like a vibe code, but you used AI to create, what was it, sloppy XML? I think that's what it's called. That library, right? And let's say you were creating Flask today. How different would that journey look like?
I don't really know. Like, that's the thing where you have to probably take a person. So like, now you start out as an engineer. My suspicion is that, generally speaking, there will be more programmers because it has become easier to create programs, and there's generally still a demand for software. So more people will try. And then it's some sort of funnel. How many of those people will enjoy this a lot and then become better programmers? I don't know what comes out at the end of it, but it becomes easier to do this. The thing is, if you build a reusable library that hopefully thousands and millions of people are going to use, like that's sort of really the ambition, then I don't know if AI is going to change all that much about how you approach that part. Because you care a lot about the API, you care a lot about the documentation. Maybe it makes it easier to write documentation. I don't really know, but like, there's a big difference between you writing a tool for yourself and you writing a library that you want many programmers and now in the future many agents to use. So I don't know yet, but in general, I don't think that the logical conclusion is that there will be fewer programmers, which I think is sort of a little bit what a lot of the standard opinion is, that it makes it, it changes it in a sense that you defer to the computer. I mean, like, I defer to the computer now, right? It's like I didn't read the documentation that much, but like, this is the state in which it is now capable of transcribing. It's not a program that I want to have. So going from there to like the final thing, and like the code that we want to use is a path, and maybe involves manual programming to some degree, but it's hard to say.
That's fair. So I from watching your videos and reading your stuff, it doesn't seem like you're spending less time programming, but it does seem that there's just different tasks that you're doing more or less of. Can you like talk a little bit more of like what you find yourself doing more of and less of?
So I would just kick this off that it does something useful. So what I wanted to do is like say, we now want a second script called summarize.py, which uses uv run -- script with the open AI library But instead of connecting to OpenAI, we want to connect to LM Studio locally, which is running on port 1234. And we want to use the Microsoft/Phi-4 model. I don't know if it managed. Well, almost. There are better transcription services, but keep it as simple as possible. We just want one simple prompt which says something like this. You are writing a summary of the given video transcript. The speaker is name. The name should be provided as a command line argument. Keep it to around 150 words. Okay, let's see if it does that. See, like I want to interrupt it now. Up, because I want to give it one extra thing. The transcript should be provided to the summarize script as an argument. Okay. Okay, sorry, now I completely forgot the question.
What with these tools, what do you find yourself doing more of and less of?
Okay, what do I do more of? So I think the act of writing good code is still kind of similar. What they're very good at is helping you debug things. What they're very good at is help you figure out how libraries work. Like I couldn't have written a summarize script as quickly, right? So it, like exploratory stuff, it is just very, very good. The challenge, I think, with balancing all of this out is that you don't really know ahead of time if the task that you have is a good fit or not. And you can turn off your brain and then terrible things happen. So what I do more is like debugging, exploratory stuff. Another thing that I like doing now is, and I think a lot of the improvements come from, like the productivity improvements come from that, is now I have a mess of some sort. Like usually the mess is a lot of data in a database. Having it create me a data browser or like a utility to better understand what I'm dealing with is super helpful, right? And I just really, really like that. So it makes it very easy to get better tools out of something. And these tools often I don't care that much if it's not perfect. So I think that's the main thing I get out of it is these things that I wouldn't have done before, basically, or where I wouldn't have spent so much time before.
So would you say you end up having like just a bunch of little like minions that get to do things for you, but the main thing is still primarily just you programming?
It really depends on how good the task fits to something. But I think that, yes, the one way I think in which one could look at this, and I think it depends a little bit, like I haven't tried it in large teams, is not everything that you do is really important. So 10 to 15% of what a company does is really important, and that's where you focus on. And then a lot of the stuff around is just, it looks like boilerplate, it looks like copy pasted. It doesn't, like, there you can probably get Claude to write most of the code, but not everything, and you have to review it. And the problem with the reviewing is that if you completely defer to Claude for writing, it's not a lot of fun to review code that no other human has been involved in.
Right.
So the problem is, like, you get into this mode where you let the agent write, and then if you're the only other programmer and you're reviewing that code, eventually you're going to let shit through unintentionally, because like your brain just turns off a little bit. It becomes boring. It doesn't become enjoyable, and you have to stay away from that part because it doesn't really work.
Something you've mentioned a couple of times is the tasks. I know that you also put out a blog post recently where you were talking about things you've learned that AI can't, like this sort of coding can't do. What are the sort of tasks you've seen that you would say, okay, let's not do this with Claude, for example?
So for instance, like now we have this thing here, right? It managed to create a summary. The
Which
code
works great, and it actually references your name. Which is awesome.
Yeah, so we can look at what it does. I didn't review it yet, but I'm assuming there's some sort of prompt that it sort of fed in. Look, and I think what I want to point out here is that none of this goes to the internet, right? I think that this is actually kind of cool. So this runs 100% locally, right? So the transcription used local model, the Phi model runs local, right? It's like you can actually do some pretty useful things without necessarily using cloud service. So, but the thing is, like, what we basically got out of this is rather messy scripts, right? I didn't give it any idea. Like, it didn't do a bad job at it, but it like, I didn't give it any indication of how I want the application to look like, which basically means I have 2 scripts that call another thing. That's not software architecture or anything like this. It's just code, right? Which is perfect for figuring out if this stuff works, but it doesn't turn it into an application. I haven't found, for instance, that just telling an agent, and it doesn't really matter which one, to create nice software architecture, I don't think it really works. So what I wrote before about it, and what I think is still the way I would like these things to work, is that you actually build the structure yourself, or maybe you build it together with Claude just to get some of the busy work out of it until you really like the setup that it has, and then you let it write code. Because otherwise you end up with this perma state of mess, which will emerge, right? But like it is really in the balance of the whole thing if it works or not, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I've seen a lot of people using more structured libraries, like lots of people using Django, for example, because there's lots more structure and getting the agent to work on that in those confines. But yeah, very cool. And I agree that architecture, that's what I see all the thought leaders saying these days, that software architecture is mainly what we will be doing in the future as developers. So, yeah, what are we doing next?
I wanted to also give me a file with timestamps. And I kind of want to put the UI around the whole thing, that I can drag up like a video file and I get a transcript. That's sort of where I want to go with the whole thing. And it is going to make a mess for a while, but I want to kind of show like how to get rid of the mess too. So we'll see if we're going there slowly but surely. I don't know yet.
That was going to be my next question is, as you're experimenting with a bunch of things, are you also keeping in mind sort of like, oh, next time I try something like this is what worked, this is what didn't work? Or are you relying on models just getting better and better? So like next time it might not even be an issue.
I think generally models are getting better, but at the same time, like I'm mostly doing agentic coding since May, and models didn't get better in that period of time.
That's fair.
And that's because like the only real change for at least the software I was using has been the release of Opus 4.1, which didn't change it all that much, and I don't use Opus to begin with. And I tried a lot with open code and some of the open source coding agents with open models, and that so far is not really working all that well, I would say. The real trick of making all of this work is figuring out how to set up these flows to be really, really helpful. And it's kind of hard to show this sometimes because programming is not that fun to begin with, I think, in some ways. Like, or at the very least, it's not very fun to watch someone program. Like, maybe it is fun individually, but like watching someone program is not very interesting. And that makes it very hard to demonstrate sometimes what these things I look good at. And even that, I think, like, I don't know how interesting this will be at the end of the day, because like we're basically letting a lot of slop through. And that's what I don't really like doing. But it's it's very laborious actually making it not sloppy. And you have to commit yourself to this work. So we'll see. So what we got here now is we have this main transcript, which we can put into the summary thing, which is just the words as I was saying them. And just to demonstrate, this is the video, right? So let me just move it to the right screen. And I don't know if you will hear the audio. We'll see. But this is a video that I was recording while I talked. And this is transcribing into 2 things now. It transcribes into this text file, and it also transcribes into this SRT file, which has the timestamps.
The timestamps, right.
Okay. And now we have these scripts here. And what I will just say now is like we're treating them as scripts. We're basically treating them as experiments. So we don't want to commit the SRT file. And this maybe will show a little bit how to actually make this more useful. So now we have edit summarize script. So what we want to do now, we want to build a web app where you can drag and drop off a video file, and then you get the transcript and the summary. That's more or less what we want. And so because I don't want to overcomplicate things, we want to keep it as simple as possible. Oh, and one other thing is, like, so far I haven't really configured Claude in any way. Like there's no Claude config, no nothing. So the agents basically, it has absolutely no context of what it's doing here. That's more or less how most of these projects start. I want to change that, but after we have created the initial structure. So I wanted to create a new web application here using, it's a good question what we should be using here. So it should be Python. So let's try Fast API.
Oh my gosh, why don't you want to use your own library? Why not Flask? Okay, Fast
I
API
don't have
is
a lot of
fine
opinions
though.
here. I will let it do this. I actually hope it is able. Actually, maybe yeah. Let's try.
You
And
could do
what's
Fast
the
API, maybe like a TypeScript front end or something. I feel like that's
this might
popular
just
these
you
days.
might actually right. Let's do Flask.
Yes, okay, Flask.
Just because I want to avoid that it goes completely crazy with web APIs right now.
Okay.
I want it to render just one page which has a drag and drop target where you can drag a file up. The only valid files are video files and audio files. Okay, let's do only video files. At an API endpoint where that video file for now is just thrown away. And then we want to use Tailwind CSS to make it somewhat pretty, but we would want to avoid, actually, I don't want, let's do it even easier. Avoid any complicated JavaScript bundlers or anything like this. We're just going to use very basic one JavaScript file, one CSS file to handle the upload logic and to make it somewhat pretty. Use modern CSS standards, but don't even try to use a dependency. The goal of this application will be to eventually transcribe video files, but we don't do any of this so far. Create the new application in web app. Use PyProject toml comfort to set up the package and use the UV build tool and the UV packaging system to manage the virtual env. No pip. Let's see. We're probably going to create some mess now. And then we're going to actually fix this up and try to make it pretty. But the goal really for now is just have this app over there. It's not going to use any of the stuff that we have. And then we're going to take the code that it has already created, which is very messy, and we're just going to try to fold it into the other app that we have with some form of reasonable modern Python.
Right.
Like that's like it already misunderstood my assignment. So let's look at this quickly. I stopped it. So I asked it to create here a Py project, which it did, right? That's correct. And it already wrote an app. But the problem here is that I asked it to use the UV build tool, and it didn't manage to do that. So what we need to do is we need to go and read some documentation. So UV build tool, build tool, or it's actually called build backend, I guess. So we are looking for build tree, build backend, UV build backend, right? So we want this. So let's say, please use this. And hopefully it goes now, downloads the documentation, reads the documentation, and discovers that it did something wrong. It did, right? So that's nice.
I do want to ask about what you've been doing right now, because you've kind of been doing things in a modular way where you start with one piece and then you're going to combine it at the end. Have you found that to be more effective or safer? Why are you doing that?
Well, I mean, like in some senses, like how I work normally too. Like I want to know, like, does this, like, is it capable of doing that? Like, I don't need a web interface to figure out if I can transcribe. Like if I can't get Whisper to run, if I can't get ffmpeg to run, then there's no point in making UI, right? So it's like you build yourself step by step, and that I think is like mainly the way I like to be looking at things. in that sense, it's not really unique to
Agentic coding.
agentic coding. Oh my god, it's going back to hatchling. 1 second. Oh,
It's close. I mean,
did you want to use UV build as your build system? I did want to use UV build as my build system, so let's this is one of the problems with this. Like, it's like, okay, like I know how to fix this by doing something else entirely. No, I don't want that. I want it to do exactly like, let's read this error. What did it say? Using UV build editor was not allowed. So let's check quickly. We want a newer version of UV build, right? So it wrote the wrong thing. Like, so you didn't read the docs correctly. This is what we need. I don't know how it even got the idea. It might not even have read the docs correctly, or it has misunderstood what it's supposed to be doing, because it should be using this. Okay, so now hopefully now it moves it on the right places.
this is what I'm saying about the agenticness of the LLMs. I feel like my hope with the LLMs is that they need to be getting better at figuring out for themselves that they did something wrong. Or like if the LLM gets an error, it should figure it out for itself, not coming back to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like, that would be nice, but like, what are my expectations here? Like, this is like barely here, right? This is already really cool. Like, I can't
Yeah,
normally
it is.
program something while talking with people. So like,
Yeah.
I take the little bit of like productivity, and so like this is actually already pretty impressive.
Yes.
Right. So we have disk. So what I want to do is, I think I want to do UV run Flask. So export Flask app is video transcribe lab app dot app. I think that's what it is. Flask debug equals 1. I think this is still how this runs. Nearly run Flask serve. Server dev. I don't even know, what is it. Where's run? So why does it not? Okay, there we go.
Okay, there we go.
So
Oh, that's pretty.
That's
okay,
cute.
so we have
Yeah, that came out
something here.
nicely.
It even has like a thing, right? So
Yeah.
presumably you can upload and then you get an error.
Very
All right, well,
nice.
we're getting there, right? So so now I want to set up the agentic loop, basically, right? Because like,
Yeah.
I'm sick and tired of like copy pasting shit left and right all the time, right? So we want to do one thing at the very least here. First of all, we want to turn on. Why did I not see what's 413? So let's do one thing. I forgot what this is. What's this status pose? Might be too large. Still it is not permitted. Maximum file size. I set the limit to 500 megabytes. Well, it's like, that's not enough. Bump it to 4 gigabytes. But we want to set up the agentic code loop. And so I will copy a file over here that I use in every single project of mine called Shoreman. I just need to check there's some nonsense in there. I don't need this. I don't need this. So I just ignore this. This is on GitHub without any of these comments in there. But basically what I'm doing here is I can it's a GitHub. Where did I put this recently? I think I put this recently on, need to find here from an SH. For instance, I have it in here. Basically, it's a thing. It's a script. I've copied this from the internet at one point, and I keep modifying it. And what it does, it allows me to say, I can have a proc file where I can say, like, my backend is the thing that I want to run all the time, which is going to be UV run Flask run, right? So we're going to do this. And now if I do Shoreman, it runs, right? Exactly the same as before, no difference. The difference is that it also logs its output into this dev log, right? So we can see it here. So the idea here basically is I want to get a way to read this log while this thing is running. So from this point onward, we want to keep Flask running over here. And we want to be able to read this log. And for this to work, we're going to put a makefile here, and we're going to say, okay, so def should be running shoreman sh, and then tail log is just going to read this def log. I can do this. So if I do make tail log, I can see what was in the log file, right? So that's the idea. Very, very simple. But why I want to do this is because I want to teach Claude to use this now. That's basically the whole point.
So
yeah.
Is the goal for Claude to be able to run the program and then diagnose if it's getting errors? Is that
so
what's
we now want to set up Claude to figure out itself without me copy pasting errors in all the time.
I see. Yeah.
That something is going on. And so the best way to do this is we're going to make a new Claude session here, and we just run init for now. Actually, I will not do this manually. I'm going to make a Claude ND file here. And so and also we're going to move the make file from web app to top level. So we're going to put all the commands in here that we want. So this the web app is over there, and the log file is also there. So this should still work. If I move the web app proc file top level, so it should say like error. So if I run it here, oops, we run. Yeah, okay. I need to change this a little bit now to do. This is going to be super annoying. I think I need to do it like this. Make def. Okay, and now we do Flask app is, I forgot what it's called. Web app src video transcribe web app. Right, this is, so it's video transcribe web app app, and then Flask debug equals 1. So now if I run it, it runs the server again. If I run it a second time, shoreman errors out because it only lets me run it once. That's one of the things that it does. And if I run make tail log, it can see the log, right? That's more or less what we wanted to do here. This is interesting. I don't know where we got this. This is very interesting, actually, but I don't care that much right now. This is okay. So now we want to document this log file, this make file, and we want to tell Claude how to use these tools. So to development. There's a make file for you to use. It's like hopefully it's going to understand that this is a thing. So make def starts the dev server, if not already running. Make tail log shows you the current errors that the server encountered. So we don't do anything else. But the goal here is that if I tell Claude like, hey, what's this error? It knows where to look. Like, that's the idea. And if I tell it to start a server, it should be able to run the server, but we keep it running here, right? And so if I now run Claude here and say, hey, please start the server, it's going to start the server, but it will get an error because it's already running, right? And I gave it this message, it's like, this is good, the server already auto-compiles, like everything is sort of built into the shoreman thing to reinforce the idea that like an error did happen, but it's because this is what we wanted, right? The server is already running. So now this sort of the setup is kind of working in a way where it should be possible for us to say, we can fix around on the code, and I don't have to copy paste the error messages in because it should be able to get the error message itself, right? So we can demonstrate this hopefully by making an error, right? So if I now fail here, let's say division by 0. If I now look into the index, right, it's like clearly this went wrong. I have a bunch of errors here. It's like there seems to be an error in the application. Please fix it. Hopefully it comes and reads the logs.
Oh, very nice.
Sees the error.
Run errors.
I don't understand why it gets this one here. There's I'm trying to understand.
There it is. I found the error though. There's a deliberate division by 0.
Get rid of the error. I just don't like that there's also this warning in there.
There's a weather warning. It's a warning. It's a
right? But that's
really
the whole
good,
point. Like
though.
you set it up in a way where your loop
Yeah.
works really well, right? And so now from that point onwards, you can sort of fix the thing.
Yeah.
So in theory now, we changed the size so that if I upload a video file now, right, it at least shouldn't error. So it uploads and it uploaded successfully and
Nice.
discarded it, right? So
Amazing.
we
Yeah.
got there.
We-
Okay, and then we want to hook up the rest of it, but like maybe I don't know if we want to go to questions or something in the meantime.
First, how long until like a system like this gets, just included into one of these tools?
They're getting better all the time, right? And so for instance, if you use bun right now, bun JavaScript, it automatically forwards browser logs to the server because that makes it so much better, right? It's like if an error happens in the console, I'm not forwarding it in this case right now. And so if I want to fix JavaScript errors too and not have to copy paste them, we'll have to set up some extra thing. So some of these bundlers get better, some of these build tools get better. And then Claude, for instance, if you run a program that takes a really long time, you can now, it's going to ask you if you want to keep it running in the background, and it keeps monitoring this program in the background. So you can, for instance, start your development server in Claude now, and you don't have to do some of the stuff that I'm doing, right? I'm just also not using it, so I'm not too familiar with it, but a lot of this, these kind of thing move into the agents themselves, and they're becoming better as a result. So some of it happens automatically, I think, over time. But in this case, I also like to be a little bit verbose just to show like what the idea is behind it, because as all of these tools are getting into the agents, there's also more stuff for you to learn. And I think the basics are actually really like, how do I get the agent to have this feedback cycle going? And this is going to be very, very specific to the project that you're working on, right? Like if you have a really complicated microservice architecture, then you will have to figure this out for yourself anyways. Like no agent is going to do this out of the box. I think like some of it is moving into the tools, but some of it is just like you need to kind of understand what you're doing in a way.
Yeah, and I mean you're clearly well skilled with working with the terminal. And so do you think that AI tools that are like primarily like terminal experiences have like an edge above those that are not?
I think that the terminal in many ways is both a benefit and a downside. So this thing should be in no way better than if you have this running in code, right? In theory, like Visual Studio Code should be able to do it the same. It's just that the agentic loop in this is really good. There's one huge benefit of running this out of the terminal, obviously, which is so for instance, there's a thing called Gemini CLI, right? Gemini, I think, right? So it's another.
Oh, I don't know for Jay.
It's another thing here. Like we have a
It's
bunch
a
of.
Google project.
I don't know what we have. What's the Microsoft one? Is there one? There's,
No. There isn't. You can show it. It's fine.
But my point is mostly we can say like, hey, what's the current time? Right? If I get to run this correctly, and it is also going like if it ever completes, it did something and it gave me this, right? And so I could now say, hey Claude, if you have a particular problem that looks like this, you can actually go to this other agent and run it inside yourself, right? And it can even run itself in itself, right? And that's a benefit that's going to be very, very hard for if it runs in your IDE. So there's a benefit of it being a command line tool because it can remote control this command line tool, right? Like you could have Claude running a screen session where it remote controls another Claude. I have never tried this, but in theory it should be possible, right? And that's much, much harder to do for things that click buttons or that click around in a UI, right? So generally, like having Claude be a remote controlling thing for another tool is what makes it so powerful.
At the beginning, setting up the web app, you were making a decision on what to use, Flask, Fast API, and so I know there's a very popular opinion with these tools becoming popular that there's going to be a consolidation as to what we end up using to, build these things, right? So curious what your take on that is.
I think like naturally consolidation happens just because of how investments in this space work. So like right now they eat a lot of money, obviously. So there will be winners and losers. How many winners? I don't know, but there will be probably fewer than the whatever 30 odd tools that we have today. I think that's going to happen naturally. I don't even want to bet on who the winner is going to be in this. Like maybe in 2 months, I'm going to use a different tool, right? I don't know.
VS Code CLI, whenever that comes.
Like for instance, like I used another used another IDE for months and months because they had very good built-in autocomplete.
Yes.
And now I stopped using it. I'm down to NeoVim and Visual Studio Code again. For completely unrelated reasons to AI, just because like Visual Studio Code is very good at C++ debugging. That's a thing that I still need to do. So I moved away, and I think that having the coding agent maybe not embedded in your IDE is also a benefit because it gives you the opportunity to use your most favorite tools. Like they're not coupled together necessarily. But I don't know if I would choose the terminal for my coding agent. I think I would. I mean, you have seen it. It's sort of it's janky. Sometimes you can't copy paste correctly. Like it's not the optimal user interface by far, right? Like if it could be like nicer app, it would be good. But it probably should also still be a command line tool, just so that you can have Claude use Gemini or have be that run, because you can also run it in the VS Code console, right? Like this is also a benefit. Like if you take VS Code, for instance, right, this little button, all it does, it runs Claude code in VS Code, right?
Yeah.
So it's very useful as a result. You can run it through SSH, you can run it on a remote server. Like that is useful, but it is also kind of foreign for a lot of developers who are maybe not familiar with terminals.
So what I'm hearing is the ideal UX for this has not been found.
I would guess that there's a better UX. Yes.
Okay, I like that. And then just the second part to that is, and Marlene had this question actually, is when you ask AI to generate like a project with like a Python web framework, Flask gets recommended a lot. So do you think, one, like what is the potential consequence to Flask because of that? And then two, do you see developers sort of using, like there'll be less of a variety of use across frameworks because of something like this?
So I think the consequence for software in the future is that, at least in the current environment that we have, a lot of new software that doesn't exist in a training set, right? Like let's say you want to build a new framework today. You want to build whatever, the framework of the future for Python. There are going to be two things that might happen. One of which is you might make it look a little bit more like a thing that exists so that you can reuse some patterns. That is not new to agents necessarily. Like there are a lot of frameworks that look like Flask because it was familiar to people that did Flask. There's one for AWS, for instance, that's very inspired by that. But then you want to have frameworks that look different, right? So Fast API looks different. So it has very different patterns. And I think if you start a framework like Fast API today, you would probably want to come with really good documentation tailored towards getting an agent to write it better if it's not in a data set. Bun does this, for instance. Bun JavaScript is when you initialize a new project, they write out a Claude MD file that has all the commands in it that it should run to be more successful. And it's somewhat working, right? So I think like one of the effects of this is that you're not just writing for a human, you're also writing for an agent. The consequence for Flask, I don't know. I think like I was talking with David if maybe we want to do something to make it a little bit better for an agent to use with like logs integration and stuff like this, maybe. Because yes, it will write a lot of Flask, but it will also not manage to debug Flask. This is one of the consequences of this. Like you have to do some extra stuff to get these things going really well. So I wanted to like try to take the code from the main project now into this. Let's commit. Let's see if it's running here. And for this, we need to add a bunch of log files to git ignore. We don't want that. And I think there's no git ignore, is there? No. So let's also add venv. And what did we get? We got this. Okay. Ah, no, this is not okay. Git arm test. Git. Okay, everything now. Okay. Edit web app. Right. So now we wanted to say like, okay, let's start here. Port the functionality from transcript.py into the web app. After the video was uploaded, we want to make a very basic transcript. Maybe we want to have it in JSON format actually, because we want to send this data back to the UI so that the user can see the transcript with timestamps and everything in the web app. And we also want to have the summarized transcript that went through the LLM process also show up in the UI. So let's do a transcribe and summarize. So we want to have in one go. So basically, don't throw away the video. We'll see if it manages to do that. I don't want to like, I wouldn't prompt it like this normally. I would give it a lot more structure, but this is like a presentation here. So we'll see how far it gets. But
Yeah.
One of the key parts is just to give it a lot of data. Like talking to this thing encourages you to give it more context. If I were to have to type all of it in, I would get lazy. Yeah, hopefully.
So this something I feel like you mentioned before, but what are you using for this voice to terminal?
So in this case, I'm using Voice Inc.
Okay.
Without anything. So I just have it set up to.
Is it an app that you can get on?
So this is an app.
Voice Inc.
Voice Inc. It's open source and paid. I only do this push to talk with, which model do I use? I use which one do I use? Large V3 Turbo. I use the same model that we're using in this transcribing app now.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think that this is super efficient, and I should probably try it. I probably will try it actually.
I mean, there are a lot of really good ones. Like Super
Yeah.
Whisper is really, really good because it also fixes up your what you're saying.
Sure.
The thing is, I don't actually like the AI fixing for Claude because it's going to fix it anyways. Like if it's the wrong stuff in it, it's going to figure it out itself, and it has lower latency, right? So it's quicker in bringing the text in. The AI fixing then goes through the internet, does a bunch of stuff. Like this doesn't leave my computer, which is very convenient.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So this is clearly a very active process. You're very much involved with the work. And I think another like very popular opinion, or maybe like just rage bait opinion that people have, is that using these tools remove your opportunity to think deeply and to work deeply. And I don't see that at all from like personal experience, but also this is just a great example of you're very much, there's a lot of like stuff going on here. It's not like we just sat here for a full hour and you're very active in this process. So I wonder if I was someone who came to you like, Armin, hey, I really feel like I'm using these tools and I'm just not like thinking, I'm not involved in as much as I used to be with like the process of creating an app or anything. What would you say to me?
I mean, you can turn off your brain and it will not be good. And there's a truth to it in a sense that if you use an AI tool, and it doesn't matter if it's an agent or anything like this, just to take over your decision-making process, then that part of your brain probably will not be trained. And there's for sure a risk to it. Like I'm actually pretty sure like the default behavior for a lot of people will be until they notice that doesn't work, the initial behavior is just to assume this tool is better than it is. Right. And then like this is basically what I'm doing right now, right? It's like, yes, maybe I'm reviewing it a little bit, but I skimmed over it very briefly because I just don't have the time during this call, during this presentation to properly review it, right? So I need to bring up the browser now to see this app. But it doesn't mean necessarily that it has to be this way. So I think I have it here. Open my eye. So we need to restart the server. This is one of the few times we do need to restart the server because we need to. Okay, did it? Okay, we got the dependency. So you can you can turn off your brain. And I think that if you have the desire to actually learn from what it does, then it's actually really, really helpful. There are a lot of tools you might not know, but they're super, super helpful, right? So for instance, I'll give you an example. JQ is a tool that can read JSON files. It can extract data out of JSON files, right? There's a tool called, but there are all the debuggers, LLDB, GDB. There's Convert, there's image magic video conversion for, there's ffmpeg. Like all of these tools exist, right? They are very, very helpful, and you can theoretically go today and read the documentation and learn it. But very few of us are going to do that, right? But as a byproduct, the AI is going to use those tools, and then you can also see what it does, how it runs it, and you can, like, if you're willing to also read what it's doing and not just silently ignore it, then you will learn from it, right? It's sort of similar, I think, in a way that the best way to learn a language is to go to the country where people speak that language and you immerse yourself in it, right? And I think that this is the part. You can immerse yourself in the output that Claude or any other agentic tool gives you, and then hopefully learn something from it, right? That's the idea.
That's super interesting. I like that idea of immersing yourself in a language. And like, so this is also kind of connecting to what Gwen was saying, but like for newer programmers, for example, would you encourage a new programmer to try vibe coding or to test this out? How do you feel about people who are entering the industry at this time? Like, would you encourage them to do this?
It's not like you have a lot of alternatives, right?
That's a good point.
You cannot avoid it, right? I think that this is one of the consequences. So it's like, yeah, of course you should do it. The problem is, like, can you afford it? That's a different question, right? So
Can you afford? Do you mean the tools like that?
no, I mean, like, it costs money in a way, right? Like,
it's free
so,
with GitHub models, though. By the way, you can use GitHub models today.
well, it's fine, but I think it's like it's important part. Like, we need to find a way to get the cost down for a lot of those people to be able to access this, right? Because otherwise you're going to end up with a situation where some people have the access to it and they're going to be way quicker at learning if they do it correctly, and the other ones can't afford it because it's too expensive. I hope at least that the cost of tokens will go down quicker. If you have a decent computer at this point, you can run some of it locally.
Yeah.
I also hope that universities will start to find ways to get their students access to these things, coding schools, stuff like this. So that's my hope, at least, how this is going to go. But yeah, I think it is a problem to some degree that. But yeah, I think like it's not like you can avoid it.
I think there are some people who are actively discouraging people to use AI. I think there's probably a middle ground there, because part of me does switch off my brain when I vibe code. But you're so right that there's part of me that's learning a lot of new things, because some things I wouldn't have even attempted to do, I can try and do now and kind of understand as I go along. So I think you're right.
So this is where I should really look at what it's doing, because like this did not produce the right output.
We're close, but not quite. But I agree with you on that. And I do think the local models are super interesting and a great resource for people. And hopefully those will improve as well.
Yeah, I'm very bullish on them getting better. It's just it takes such a long time. I got this in the log, but the UI shows blah blah blah. What's going on? I don't want to read the code right now, but it's really not able to show this. But I mean, like, think of it this way: like, in February or January this year, most people wouldn't have been able to build an app like this while talking to others about anything, right? And we have now reached a point where it's like, yeah, of course it's possible, right? It's like, it's not surprising anymore that's doable. And I think like that is kind of the wrong way to looking at this, which is like one of the reasons why I think a lot of people have negative opinions on AI, other than like the concerns about like climate change and sort of and I would say the ethical concerns about like training and whatever, is this feeling that obviously the only way of using it is turning off your brain, and we don't want that, and it's going to create slop and all of this. And this video will not convince anyone of otherwise, because this is an experience of my not having the brain on. But you can learn not to turn off your brain, and then it's really worthwhile, right? So at least we got the timestamps now, right?
Beautiful.
But the thing is that I find it very impressive that they can do that. And the thing is,
Yeah.
they cannot just like spit out some code and that's it. They can do it in the context of really useful stuff, right? And there are some programmers who are currently maybe sort of very negative on it because like they don't like it for the code that it writes. It's like, okay, then fine. Don't do that. But it doesn't mean that it's not useful, right? It can debug. It can do a whole bunch of other stuff. And you can run it on your own machine to some degree, right? Like, it's not going to be perfect, but maybe some of these basic tool loops you can run locally on your machine now too. And like maybe that's one way of it getting a little bit more of an acceptance of this. It is, we moved from, I think, very quickly from maybe 5 to 10% better engineer output to, well, this is life-changing. And it really is. Maybe you don't write all that code with Claude, and maybe you write very little code with it, but now I can have a pretty UI pop up to debug my data, or I can get myself my own debugging tool that I wanted to build, or I can have it sit in a loop and debug my application for me. There's a lot of really interesting things that it can do that maybe are more useful for engineers that say, like, I don't like the code that it writes. So you don't have to necessarily say, like, it's all going to be about code.
Just one last question here.
Exactly.
And then, yeah, I know we have to wrap up shortly, but so here we have like the functionality that you wanted to reach with this. And then let's say you wanted this to actually be something for production. What would be the next steps for you? Would you go into like manually polishing things up, or
No,
like, what does that look
I would not ship that app.
Okay.
Like, this is, I think it's like, as cool as it is, like this is a bunch of nonsense. Because like this in the real app, this should use a queue, they should use a database. Like there's multiple things that it should do. I should probably figure out, like, is the transcription that it makes actually good enough with this model? Maybe I need to tweak now the prompts. Like, there's a bunch of stuff you would have to do, and I think you would approach this in a very normal software engineering point of view. You would write tests. You would clean up this API. Like, there's just a lot of stuff you would do, and none of that is different just because you have an AI now. I think you would basically start treating this like a normal software engineering product, and you would spend about a good hour to review all the code that it did. You would treat it like you got this code from an intern, and now you wanna, like, from that point, sort of, it's the same.
Okay.
Just with the difference that the intern doesn't learn. Like, you can't argue with the AI. You start a new session, it's back to square one. When you have like, the thing is, like, we wrote code here, right? That's primarily what it did. But sometimes you have problems, right? And the problems are not necessarily related to writing code, right? It might just be understanding. So for instance, so we have this I have this whisper.cpp, right? That's a thing we have. I downloaded it. I can just ask it stuff, right? It's like, I have the problem that sometimes words are transcribed incorrectly. Is there support in whisper.cpp we can use to give it hints about which words to use? Investigate in the folder, right? Obviously, you could talk to your code in many different ways, but like, with it being able to use tools and everything, it can do some really, really deep dives and figure out what's going on. I think, like, that's for very senior software engineers, that's of maybe like, oh no, I don't like the code that it writes. Like, that's the part that I think is sort of maybe the gateway drug a little bit, because it is really good at doing that. And you can learn from that. You can also learn, like, how does it find it? How does it do stuff?
So there's something for everybody, I think. If you don't want it to write all your code, that's fine. There's still some kind of benefit that you can probably find from it. I would agree with that take.
Yeah, I'd agree too. I think we are wrapping up, but we just wanted to ask as well, maybe as the final, is there anything else you would love to share with us or the people watching? Any advice to people who are getting into agentic coding and And we also know you're starting something new. Do you also want to?
A little hint.
No pressure,
Well,
but
so
we
far
would
it's a secret.
enjoy a hint.
So far, it's a secret.
Okay.
I guess the one thing that I want to share is that I think it's really important to play with this. And I have a bunch of discussions all the time, and I think like I mentioned this a couple of times, that there are so many people that are just they're outright rejecting it. And I think they have some point of like from the moral reasons or else. But even if nothing else happens anymore, even if we plateau here with the quality of our models, what we can do with them, the way we can fine-tune them to be really good agentic code tool users is enough to allow really interesting new use cases. And this is going to be with us for the next 30 years in one form or another, right? So I think like I can only encourage everybody to play with it.
Absolutely. That's
And so,
great.
for instance, if you show the screen once more, right? I asked it how to do that, and it found it. It found an example. It found the parameter that I would have to provide. Like this is real time saving.
Thank you so much, Armin. We've learned a lot here. It's definitely things I'm going to incorporate into my workflow. Marlene, do you have any final words?
No, yeah, this is super helpful. Exactly what I envisioned.
Yeah.
Talking to you about agentic coding, which is super cool. So thank you for sharing us. And I'm sure people learned a lot. So thank you for joining us, Armin.
You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.